Chapter 61. Trouble in the Headquarters. As Broly waited for Aaliyah to come out, few younger disciples walked past him. They looked and whispered among themselves. They seemed to think that he was about to have a bad time. Slowly a small crowd had formed around Broly. Suddenly the crowd parted, making way for a mature-looking woman. She had shoulder-long smooth red hair and long legs. Like Aaliyah, she was well-toned. Although her sizes were comparably smaller, she gave off a kind but also fierce vibe in her battle armor. She was slightly taller than Aaliyah. As she walked towards Broly, many of the boys were staring at her swaying butt. Although she gave off kindness, no one seemed to dare to approach her. "Hello, Broly. Long time no see." She smiled brightly at him. "Kana? Man, what the fuck happened to you girls?" "HM? What do you mean?" She tilted her head confused. "You both became really cute. I can't help but feel tempted to." "What? Me cute? I hee." He looked at her flustered expression with a smile. "How have you been?" Being spoken to, she came out of her dazed state. "I have been great, thanks to you." "HM? I have been away for the last 6 months though, and before that I only trained you." "True, and that was the best thing someone could have done to me. To be honest, after you forced me to see the truth, I was kind of lost and wanted to make it up to you, be useful. After the time you trained me and just left to go on your journey, I realized that you didn't want anything in return." Sigh. "It really took me too long to realize that I had a place where I belonged to. People who supported me unconditionally. But I did try to kill you so dash, which only showed how truly upset you were about me. Maybe you really wanted to kill me, but the fact is that you saved me instead. If you hadn't meant it, my life would probably have been worse than death. Only with your truest intent, you were able to pull me out of that dark place. This is why I wanted to thank you." She stepped closer and held his hands, looked him in his eyes and smiled. "Broly, thank you for saving me." Thud thud. Broly could hear his heartbeat, looking into her sincere eyes. "There it is again. My emotional energy is agitated. The flow of energy is going down to my life force center and—" The door suddenly opened and Aaliyah stepped out, interrupting Broly's thoughts. He looked at her and saw Aaliyah in her battle armor. Although he saw that armor numerous times in the past, he couldn't help but feel happy as it was tightly hugging her figure. Kana distanced herself after Aaliyah came out, but still had a bright smile on her face. Aaliyah moved her squinted eyes between the two. "All right, let's go." Broly turned around and started walking, as the girls followed behind, each of them on one side. Broly was leading the two and headed towards the cafeteria. The crowd parted a path for them. Only a group of 3 Saiyans seemed determined to stand in their way. "Aaliyah, who is that? I already said that I won't tolerate any other male friends of yours. You are my future wife. You should accept your fate. We are the future royalties and not a nobody like him should be near you. We are the future royalty dash." The guy in the middle kept babbling on and on. Broly didn't seem to bother at first, but as he said that he was a nobody, Broly fixated his gaze on him. Aaliyah and Kana looked at each other and could read each other's expression. "This will not end well. Ain't nobody?" His eyes turned yellow. The fellow felt like the gaze pierced through him, as his back was getting wet from sweat. His knees became wobbly as he took a few steps to the side. "I am a legend," Broly said to him as he passed by. The guy fell to the ground and seemed to leak a bit. Aaliyah caught up to Broly and wanted to explain that kid's identity. "Broly, that kid Wadash. I don't care." It was a short answer, but it conveyed much more than it appeared. Aaliyah understood what he meant. He didn't bother. No, it should be that he thought of the politics and identities of people as insignificant. Broly was always striving for strength. It should be obvious that he doesn't value arrogant people who rely on their background. Aaliyah thought about something Broly said to Taro when they were training together. "You are chatting away about how you are confident that you will be the strongest, but it is only arrogance when you aren't able to back it up." Of course, Broly beat Taro up afterwards. As she reminisced about the past, she saw Kana do the same with a slight smile on her face as she gazed at his back. She looked at Broly and thought that his shoulders seemed to be broader. They quickly arrived in the cafeteria, got some food and started to eat away. While they were devouring their food, unlike their previous imposing image they displayed, Broly asked them about Taro and Ace. They told him that they were in space investigating a rift. It seemed that it was quite stable and could potentially be used to leave this planet. Since it is dangerous in space, they sent the strongest up there to analyze it. Aaliyah and Kana were supposed to be there as well, but they had just come from another mission which ruled them out for now. The majority of the Saiyans who had the black liquid inside them were also sent up into space, and the trip usually took a few months. They were eager to experience a thrill and were bored to hunt down wildlife. So they jumped at the first invitation to go investigate a dangerous area with the additional reward of finding a way to leave this planet. Broly then asked them about their progress and their mastery of their Super Saiyan. After overcoming their initial difficulties of becoming a Super Saiyan, Aaliyah was the fastest to gain strength afterwards, quickly surpassing Kana. Taro was close behind her strength-wise, and Ace lacked behind the most. Although he still gained Super Saiyan shortly after the others, his overall strength was the weakest among them, but he could close the gap to Taro in a fight, as he was more of a strategic fighter. Against Aaliyah and Kana, he had more difficulties as they weren't relying solely on their strength unlike Taro. Now after a few years of mastering Super Saiyan, Aaliyah and Kana broke through the next level, attaining Super Saiyan 2. It appeared that Kana was now very good at using her emotions, and was quickly able to reach the next level with the advice Broly had given them in the past. Aaliyah was just talented, and was able to go to the next level after training to the extreme. Taro and Aize were on the verge of breaking through, but they still needed some time to do so. Broly estimated that they should be only a bit weaker than Kakarot and Vegeta in the Buu saga. Did anybody else show up that can turn Super Saiyan, or at least have the potential to become one? Not really. The generation after us are rather weak, to be honest. The strongest hovers around 400,000, and he is already 15. It will take a while before someone talented shows up again. Kana continued with a frown. After the war, there was no external threat, and with no one challenging us, the new generation got laid back. They don't have a sense of threat and think of themselves above everyone else, only because the other races give us some face. It starts to be annoying talking to them. Don't you send them to do missions? Broly asked as he became more dissatisfied with what he heard. Well, yes, but only that are far below their strength. The upper level doesn't want to lose more of younger generation, as we are still few in numbers. TCH, how does it help to have numbers if we are too weak to defend ourselves? Broly complained. Kana gritted her teeth as she spoke. They entertained the thought to stay here. What nonsense. We are proud Saiyans. Have they forgotten what race they belong to? Broly slammed his fist on the table, instantly turning it into dust. Aaliyah began to speak after the dust settled. Broly, the father of the kid you beat up, was from the leader of the Department of Trade. He and a bunch of other Saiyans have made a pact with some of those who had their strength risen through the black liquid to take control of the headquarters. We got wind that they prepared for the moment we went through the rift. How did you get to know of this, and why didn't you do anything if you knew about it? We still have many loyal eyes in other apartments. They are especially loyal to Jine as she had saved many lives back in the day. We haven't gotten any concrete evidence. We only know that it stems from the father, since he is one of the weaker Saiyans, who would be in trouble if we made contact with the outside world again. We think that he fears to lose his power as soon as we do. But we can't just imprison them without evidence. It would cause displeasure among the other Saiyans and Dash. You sound like a human. Human? Who told you that we need evidence to justify our actions? The city lord said that most races would become displeased with a government that suppresses other opinions, and since our race was becoming more gentler, we thought it would be a good idea to listen to him. Indeed. He's right. The city lord is wise, but he's not a Saiyan. He won't understand us, just because he read about us. Although we became more laid back and gentler, we are still Saiyans. Even the kindest Saiyan would feel his blood boil, seeing an epic battle. The will to strive for strength and battle is deeply rooted in us. Only because we are in peace doesn't mean we have changed. As for that guy and his group, they are not fit to be called Saiyans. It seems I have to remind our race who we are. Chapter 62, Saiyans. Word went around that the former champion and the savior of Perditus came back from his journey. Rise was one of the first Saiyans that heard of Broly's return from a subordinate. It was reported that Broly had humiliated his son in front of a crowd, going so far to make him piss himself in public. Rise was of course furious when he heard about it. He wanted to take revenge, but he knew that no one was able to harm Broly or his friends. Rise thought using politics to pressure or put restrictions on him would be of no effect. Going by the addicts Broly showed in the war, it wouldn't be far-fetched if Broly killed him in a fit of rage. Rise needed to play this carefully. He needed to wait until Broly and his team went through the rift and then disrupt the space inside. Best case scenario would be Broly's death. Worst case would be that he wouldn't be able to return. Either way, with Broly and company out of the way, he would be able to take over and rule this planet. A few days passed until Rise heard about some leaked information. It appears that Broly and his crew, as well as a bunch of other Saiyans, would be traveling into the rift tomorrow. They haven't released the news yet as they didn't want the others to get their hopes up yet. Rise knew that if he wanted Broly to be gone for good, he needed to disrupt the space moments after they entered, or else he would have crossed the rift unharmed. Even if Broly managed to survive by crossing it, it would at least give him years, until they found a way back in, to come up with a counterplan. The next day a spaceship shot into the air to space. Rise saw this and immediately sent the strongest ones he had to deal with, up with his own spaceship. Although it wasn't as fast as other spaceships, it was able to conceal itself, which fitted this mission perfectly. He looked into the direction Broly's spaceship flew. So, what if you are the legendary Super Saiyan? I will rule this planet. A few hours later the group he sent reported back that they accomplished their mission and would be heading back. Rise started laughing manically and ordered his troops to start their revolt. He was euphoric about the prospect that he would soon be the new king. He only needed to kill Jine and Daz, as they were the most invested in the ideas of leaving this planet. He wasn't confident to convince them to come over his side. But after he disposed of them, no one then would be able to stop him. With his elite team and all his hidden allies following him, they first headed towards Daz's dojo, as Daz would usually train the next generation at this time. It was the perfect place to start his new rule, with the next generation as his witness. Daz, your time has come, but don't worry, it would only be a painful death, he said aloud as he entered the room. He swung open the door and froze at the entrance. He looked stupid, frozen in place with his mouth wide open. This is impossible. What greeted him were hundreds of Saiyans. The room was big, as it was usually used for fighting. It could easily hold a few hundred people without making it seem too crowded. The dojo was a bit offside, so he wasn't able to know that most, including Jine and Daz, had gathered. But this wasn't why he was shocked. It was because of the trio in the middle that stared at him. Broly had a sneer on his face as he waited to let the shock sink in. He was back in his iconic clothes as he majestically stood there, looking down on Rise. You were supposed to be in the rift, they said. Dash. Well, with how weak-willed they were, it was easy to force them to say a few words. Rise knew that this wouldn't end well if he stayed. He looked around to find a way to escape. He saw that the crowd didn't seem to be filled in with everything. Before he could do anything with it, Broly appeared in front of him and grabbed him by the neck like chicken and lifted him up. Kana, as if teleporting, emerged behind the group that followed Rise and blocked the entrance. Broly still held Rise by the neck as he moved towards the center of the room. He looked around and waited until the crowd calmed down. You probably don't know what Rise's plan was. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that I and my team went inside a rift and disturbed the space inside, essentially trying to kill or at least lock me out. He tried to do so because he wanted to rule this planet, but feared me. The crowd exclaimed after hearing this, and hushed whispers resounded out in the crowd. Silence. This is not why I have gathered you all here, to witness this fool's death. Wait, don't kill me. Rise was able to get those words out, begging for his life. His son suddenly burst inside the room and rushed towards Broly. Let my father go. Broly snapped Rise's neck and threw his corpse towards the approaching sun, following with a ki blast. The son didn't even have the chance to say anything else, as the father-son duo directly disintegrated. Kana followed suit, killing the rest of the group. Most of the next generation screamed out in shock, as they just witnessed one of their leaders being killed in front of their eyes. The older generation only widened their eyes, seeing the decisiveness of Broly. Broly looked at the older generation and continued speaking. I know most of you now think of every life as immensely important, as our race was on the verge of extinction. After living under the constant threat of the CE, you started bonding more with your family members, and with it you lost your edge. I don't tell you it is wrong and that you shouldn't value the ones around you, but you have to know who we are. Everybody here knows the thrill of the fight. Some more, some less, but it is still present in every one of us. It is something that is deeply rooted within us. Without a doubt, our future generation will want to strive for greater heights in the vast universe. If the time comes when that spoiled generation move out and encounter different races, they will be slaughtered like sheep, only because we didn't guide them right. He let his gaze wander the crowd. I am already more than capable of killing Frieza with one punch, but he wasn't any near the peak of the universe. There are countless of strong experts and even gods that can wipe us out in seconds. We aren't strong, but we Saiyans have so much potential that we could rule the whole universe. To be honest, I get why that weakling wanted to become king and rule this planet. It is very enticing to be in power, but as you could see, no matter the schemes and plans he made, it was all meaningless after being confronted with real strength. Broly saw that they were attentively listening to what he was saying. Without strength, we are just chicken waiting to be slaughtered. Now I want to ask you something. Are we chicken?
No.
The crowd erupted in a scream as they waved with their fist, especially the older generation, as it seemed that they now let all their pent-up emotions out. Then what are we? We are Saiyans. We are the strongest. All kinds of shouts sounded out in the room as they hyped each other up even more. From today onwards, I will be the one with the last say. I will lead you to glory. He struck his fist up and released his ki and his aura. The whole room trembled, and the crowd erupted in cheers as they chanted his name. Broly! Broly! Hours later, after the crowd calmed down and dispersed, Aaliyah went to Broly, who was back in his trainings chamber all sweaty, indicating that he just had an intense workout. I thought you would rush out and kill him after I told you about everything, but you instead waited and lured all of his hidden pieces out. Well, it would have taken longer to investigate every single Saiyan after Rise had been exposed. Didn't want to waste my time with this. Nevertheless, it was a strategic move, fitting for a leader. Broly, you outdid me. They already hail you as the new king. I first wanted to become the sole leader, but now it seems I won't be able anymore. Sigh. Who said you can't? Broly grinned. Chapter 63, New Insights. Broly took her hand and pulled her closer. He embraced her with his hands on her lower back. He slowly glided one hand down to her buttocks and grabbed it. He indulged in the soft feeling in his hand. This time she didn't resist. In contrary, she leaned herself into his embrace, which only fired him more up. Her face took on a bright red color and said almost inaudible, "I don't think I am ready for kids." Broly was a bit stunned as she looked into her eyes. Hee, we don't have to have kids. I should tell you, I noticed that since a while back my emotional energy seems to be easily agitated, which amplifies my lust, but don't worry, I still have control over it. If I don't want to get you pregnant, I just won't supply it with life force. It is rather simple, honestly. You don't want kids, then why do you want to have sex? She asked while tilting her head in confusion. Although she asked the question, he was equally confused by it. For the pleasure, of course. What has pleasure to do with sex? You are 18 already. Don't you have solo experience already? Solo experience? About what? She looked up to him as she was genuinely asking. Oh boy. Cough. All right, let me ask you something. Suddenly the door swung open revealing Kana, who was walking inside. Broly and Aaliyah were a bit flustered by the sudden entrance and distanced themselves from each other. Kana slowed down as she approached the two with a smile on her face. Did I interrupt you guys? Cough.
No.
We were just done. Broly answered quickly. Oh good, considering the position you two were in, I thought Aaliyah was about to climb you. Broly was scratching his cheek as he heard that. Climb? Yeah, you know, climbing the tower. Ride the animal. What are you talking about? Aaliyah was a bit bumped out since a while now. She didn't seem to understand what the two were saying. Kana looked at her, and then at Broly with a raised eyebrow. Broly only shrugged his shoulders. I think I know where the problem lays. Aaliyah, who told you about sex? Is that important? Daz told me. She was embraced but still answered. Your father, huh? You know, since Saiyans are constantly in war and enjoy the fights, Saiyans don't really seek out pleasure in other things. We only see sex as a way to reproduce, but other races usually treat it like we treat battles, seeking it out almost any time they can, usually with someone they are in love with, as it is an intimate thing. So, I think Broly didn't approach you with the intention to have kids. He was clearly lusting after you when he pulled you closer. Aaliyah pondered about it. She still couldn't understand how one would be able to enjoy creating children. Broly was confused. How do you know that I peeked, she said with a bright smile. At first glance it seemed innocent, but taking a closer look one could see the lewdness in her expression. She tries to hide. Aaliyah, you don't have to overthink it too much. To be honest, I only learned it after Broly told me to gather information and stumbled upon it. I asked some of the other races and from other Saiyans in my age. They pretty much confirmed the difference. I did intensive research for Broly, and it seems that is also one of the reasons why we are considered a warrior race. Only with peace, Saiyans start searching for other things to replace our desire for battle. Greatest example would be Rise. He seemed to prioritize political power over the thrill of the fight. To know what I am talking about, you need to experience it yourself. Later on, you can have some solo experience and learn your body better by yourself. Aaliyah said, slightly seductive at the end, as she licked her lip. But how does one dash? I will show you. Kana moved behind Aaliyah and pulled her closer, embracing her from behind. She gently touched Aaliyah's sides. Kana then wrapped one arm around her waist, pulling her as close as humanly possible. Her other hand stroked Aaliyah's behind, before slowly gliding her hand to the front, guiding her hand over her knee up her inner thigh. Aaliyah twitched by the touch and became a bit anxious. She suddenly closed her legs, trapping Kana's hand in between, while evading Broly's lustful stare. Her whole face, up to her ears, were already brightly red. The whole time Kana was staring at Broly with a provocative gaze. Trying to rile him up even more, she pulled Aaliyah's face towards hers. She leaned in to give Aaliyah a kiss. Again, the door swung open and Jine stepped in. The trio, startled by the sound, looked at the door, frozen in place. Cough. I think I will come again later, Jine said with an awkward smile and slowly backed out of the room.
No.
We were already done. Aaliyah escaped Kana's grasp. Although there was nothing to fix, she quickly tried to readjust her clothes before continuing, still with a red face. We wanted to go out now anyway. Do you need something, Aunt Jine? Jine looked at the three before answering, well, we still need to come up with the future government. Since Broly is now declared king by the public, we have to at least get the basics right. Broly's emotional energy was filling up his whole body at the moment. He didn't want to stop, but this was something which needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Alright, what are we waiting for then? Let's go. He had mostly mastered his legendary state, to a degree where it wouldn't affect his rationality anymore. His decision-making wouldn't be influenced just because he was horny. There was a time and a place, and now was certainly not the time. He also thought it would be good to prevent unwanted misunderstandings, as Aaliyah needed some lessons from Kana. Kana was a bit disappointed that the whole mood was destroyed and ended so soon, but she quickly pulled herself back together. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. By the way, since when did you guys forget how to knock? My trainings room is not an open market. Well, your door sign is green, the one with your number on it. You have to turn it red from the inside if you don't want to be disturbed. Jine pointed at the number left to the door. I forgot that. It has been a while since you have trained here. There were some changes made. Aaliyah and Kana can teach you everything if you have another spar. Kana was smiling brightly, obviously undisturbed or rather happy by what Jine said, unlike Aaliyah who was fiddling with her hands. They all then went outside and headed towards where the other leaders were waiting. For a few hours they discussed what rules and how the future government should be shaped. Broly was disinterested with the whole logistics, details, and such, so he wanted to maintain the current order. In the end, it was decided that he could assign people into the head positions of the departments if he wanted to, but he wouldn't dictate how exactly everything would run. It would be managed by the departments on their own. Broly would only be consulted for mayor direction changes, or when mayor problems occurred. Basically, he would show the general direction the race should take, and everything else would be handled as before. The only difference now would be the contact between other races in the universe, as he would be the go-to person for a leader's talk. Additionally, if another putsch occurred, they would need to handle Broly first, as he was the symbol for the current government. After all was said and done, they all went home. Broly saw that Kana was pulling Aaliyah by her hand towards her room. Broly could only anticipate the future. He thought Aaliyah would need some time to relearn the meaning of the intricacies of sex. Kana, on the other hand, Broly grinned at the thought. He was also informed that they would receive some news about the rift soon. With all what happened today, he was way too excited to head to bed now. He instead went towards the trainings rooms. Just before he entered his room, he heard someone give off short shouts while hitting something. Obviously, someone was training a few rooms away, but he saw that the person didn't close the door. It was late at night. He wanted to do the sleeping a favor, as training could turn out to be extremely loud. He went up to the door and took a glimpse inside. Chapter 64, News. He went up to the door and took a glimpse inside. He saw a young woman with bluish skin and violet hair. She reminded Broly of a younger-looking version of Widowmaker from Overwatch. He had met her before, when he rescued her after she escaped from the attack from Saiyans. Broly already heard that the City Lord hosted another tournament for older people, but he wouldn't have thought that she could become so strong that she was scouted as the City Lord's disciple. Before he could close the door, he was spotted by her. She stared at him with a widened eye. She ran up to him. She stood a few meters away and gave a salute to him. Sir Broly, it is an honor. She was almost shouting at this point. Hey ahem, Violet. It has been 12 years already, hasn't it? Seems like you made tremendous progress. Yes, sir. Although the Saiyans are gone thanks to you, it doesn't mean there are no other threats. I want to be at my best if we get attacked one day once again. She spoke with conviction. Broly smiled. People like her, who give their best no matter the situation, will push a civilization to new heights. Just call me Broly. Keep up the good work and remember to have enough rest between your sessions. Those are as important as the workout itself.
Understood, si Broly.
Broly closed the door and headed towards his room. Violet still stood in salute with utmost admiration, still lingering in her eyes as she looked at the closed door. I knew he was great, but after becoming a disciple and heard about his feats, Broly is not only the greatest battle genius, but my savior and the savior of the whole planet. He rushed into the base of the Saiyans alone and slaughtered every single last of them. What a sight that would have been, Violet thought. Broly went inside his training room, closed the door, and looked around. After a while, he found out how to turn the sign red and went up to the gravity control. Now that he thought about it, it was weird that no one else had claimed this room. He looked at the options. Surprisingly, it started from 500G upwards to 1500G. They had risen the upper limits, but he wondered why they removed the lower options. Not wanting to ponder about it any longer, he turned it on and started training. The next morning, he stepped outside still sweating all over. His clothes were again torn numerous times. It couldn't handle the intense training he completed every session. He needed to find other clothes that wouldn't be damaged that easily. He walked towards a famous armor shop in the city center. They made high-quality armor for the elites of all races. On the way, he attracted the crowd's attention with his 12 m of height, as he was easily spotted. Not many races were tall in the city, so he especially stood out. Few people knew of his identity, and it quickly spread like wildfire. Some even tried to approach him, but as soon as he saw that, he released his aura. Everyone without exception made way for him, not able to approach closer than 2 meters. He walked inside the shop and was immediately greeted by numerous armors, resembling different forces of the universe. He saw the armor in the style of the Galactic Patrol and also armor made after Frisia's forces. One piece in particular stood out to him. A black chest armor with a green midsection and shoulder pads, corresponding black armbands and black boots with white borders. The toes on the boots were green as well. It looked almost identically to the one in the new Broly movie. He pointed at it and said, "I will take this." The shop owner, who was reading what seemed to be the news, didn't look up and just said the price. 100 energy crystals. I will take the purple pants and that green fur as well. 150 then. Go to the Saiyan headquarters and say that Broly owes you money. They will pay you. Without waiting for a response, he flew up wanting to leave. The shop owner saw this. He screamed out thief and pressed a button under the counter. The armor in Broly's hand suddenly lit up in blue lightning, enveloping it completely. He looked through his items and removed a small device on the inside of the armor and crushed it. The lightning ceased, and he flew away. The shop owner looked with widened eyes at Broly, who was completely unfazed by the safety measurements. Did he say his name was Broly? The savior? As Broly flew towards the palace, he noticed that many on the ground were pointing at him. He looked around and saw that he was the only one flying. Did they put restrictions on flying? While he was thinking this, a group of 5 guards flew at him. Stop, you have violated the law. For we're rushing at him, ready to engage him at any second. Stand down. What seemed to be the leader screamed out, shocking the other 4 guards. Sir Broly, I'm sorry about that. Not many know how you look like, that's why we got called by several citizens of your actions. They don't know how I look like? Yes. You never had a public appearance, except for the tournament and the war, of course, but that is only a small part of the population and mostly the war veterans. If that is the case, I think it is time to spread a picture. Thanks a lot, see ya. Take care, sir. Broly shot through the air towards the palace. He quickly arrived at his new room. It was not far from his old one. This section of the building in general was where all the elites' rooms were, and this one was a new room, specially made for him, as a permanent residence. He went inside, took a shower and put on his new clothes. He stood in front of the mirror and examined himself. In the past years, he was constantly outside wandering. He had attained a healthy tan. Broly thought that he came close in appearance, in his base form, to the one in the new Broly movie, minus the scars of course. He stretched a bit, trying to adapt to the new armor. He previously went around shirtless all the time, so he needed some time to adjust wearing one. He stepped outside and saw Kana waiting for him beside his door. Her eyes wandered up and down as she reviewed Broly's new clothes. I prefer no chest armor, but it is nice looking, and the tight pants really suit you, she said while staring at his crotch. She looked like she would start drooling anytime now. After knowing about Saiyans' disinterest in sex, Broly thought that Kana had to indulge herself in pleasure for the last years if she reacted to him in this manner. Thanks. Are you only here to compliment me on my new clothes? She didn't seem to react to his question, only coming out of her daze when Broly snapped his fingers in front of her eyes. HM? Yeah, we got news that you took some clothes from the shop in the city center. You know the suit is actually made for you. The shop owner said that it was a thank you for saving the planet. He also apologized for electrifying you. Really? That's nice. Pass him my thanks. Anything else? Will do. Yes, we got news from the team in space. We thought you might want to look at the data. Sure. Lead the way. Shortly after they arrived at the observatory, leaders of other races were already present as they discussed the data present. They noticed that Broly entered the room and many started walking towards him. Your Majesty, Broly. Congratulations on becoming the new king of the Saiyans. Many spoke out and congratulated him and wanting to deepen their alliance. I have not been crowned yet, but thank you. He then proceeded to look at the data, the team responsible for analyzing the rift, sent. He looked through it all, and it looked that everything seemed to be stable enough for travel. The time inside was the same outside as well, erasing the worries coming out of the rift far in the future. The only problem was that they couldn't analyze the whole rift, meaning that there might be difficulties deeper inside. The teams now in space are coming down in a few hours. Then they will report anything that they might have noticed but couldn't record down. There had been a few potential pathways, but this seemed to be the most stable of them all. A few scientists have already made a few devices that could stabilize the rifts to some degree, but they would have to enter one to run more tests. If the investigation crew give a positive evaluation, it might be time to leave the planet. The leaders were eager to explore the rifts. If they could securely stabilize it, they wouldn't need to leave the planet behind but could use it as their headquarters. The distorted space around the planet would prove useful as a defense. If someone wanted to attack this planet, they would need to go through that rift, making this planet easy to defend. Chapter 65. Stable Rift. A few hours later, a giant spaceship came down and landed near a small crowd. Broly and the other leaders were already waiting for their return to greet them. Shortly after landing, figures started emerging from the spaceship. Tens of scientists and soldiers came out. Many of them were Saiyans that volunteered for this mission. They were happily conversing as they went down, which gave hope to the leaders for more good news. Broly saw Zinjo and Blitz come out as well. Broly went ahead and greeted them. They were surprised to see him after all these years. Zinjo became unusually tall with his 2.5 meters of height. He towered over most people around. Blitz seemed tiny on his side, even though he could be considered tall among the races with 1.8 m. Zinjo with his size gave an imposing figure, especially with his forearms. He stood in front of Broly with a big smile on his face. He shook Broly's hand. Man, it has been a while. You could have at least shown up once these past years. Zinjo's voice was booming and very deep. It only added to his imposing image. Ha ha ha. What can I say? There was just too many interesting things to explore. Hey Blitz, still fast as ever? Blitz gave a smile as well. Of course, I would have claimed to be the fastest on this planet, if it weren't for a particular person. That reminds me, you have to show us this legendary Super Saiyan transformation that everyone talked about back in the day. We only heard rumors, but we never got to experience it firsthand. Zinjo added. Sure, next time though. Gotta go greet my team members. He said his goodbyes and headed to Taro and Ace, who helped unloading. You not gonna greet your king? Broly said with a smug expression. Taro and Ace turned around and had a shocked expression on their face. You are back? Taro screamed and pointed at Broly's face. Broly quickly grabbed his finger and bent it slightly backwards. What did I tell you about pointing fingers at me? Ow ow ow. I am sorry, won't happen again. Broly let go and Taro nearly fell backwards. He rubbed his finger with a pained expression. Hey Broly, good to see you. Ace said, gave Broly a nod and proceeded to unload. Broly had a bitter smile on his face. Ace was always the more serious one, and if he had a mission, he would carry it out first, diligent as ever. Ace had lean muscles and was of average size with 1.7 m. If he put on a bigger pullover, one wouldn't even notice that he was ripped. Taro, on the other hand, was rather tall with 1.9 m and was a bit bulkier but still on the lean side. They both had a healthy tan. By the way, what do you mean with greeting our king? Since when do we have a king? Taro asked. Well, since yesterday, and guess who king is? Broly puffed out his chest and put his hands on his waist. What? No way. You are king? Taro screamed out in disbelief. Ace also stopped in motion as he looked at Broly with widened eyes. Ha ha ha. Who else? That's insane. That's really, well, doesn't matter if I become stronger than you. Position doesn't mean a thing anymore. So, I guess the future generation will be put into harsher environments? Ace asked. He gave his box to another soldier. Of course. We need to get stronger as a race. I will talk about it after I was crowned. Naturally, I allow you to witness the birth of the new king. Taro rolled his eyes as he heard this. Ace, on the other hand, had a glimmer in his eyes, as if he wanted to ask Broly something. Before Broly could ask him what he wanted to say, the leader of the Myrmidons called Broly to come, as they now had the information needed. We will talk about it later, have work to do. Broly turned around and headed to the building. Can't believe it. Our team leader became our king, Taro said to Ace, as they looked at Broly leaving. I thought it would inevitably happen. You should know how proud he is to be a Saiyan. Sooner or later there would be something that he would be dissatisfied with, and with his strength it was only a matter of time that he would take control. Oh, yeah, you're right. Besides, with his momentum, one would naturally want to follow him. The charisma he naturally gives off is awing. He will be an important figure, not only in the history of us Saiyans but in the whole universe. That I know as well. His strength alone makes his rise something that can't be stopped anymore. True. Alright, enough talking, more unloading. Broly was sitting with the other leaders, as they listened to what the head scientists simplified for them about the rift. The space around the rift is stable, so there shouldn't be any major changes inside the rift. The time inside, as we have already sent in the data, is about the same as outside. It is only about twice as fast inside, which compared to the other stable rifts is the tiniest difference. We didn't pick up any unusual energy inside, and there seems to be no physical obstacles. The only problem we have is the space inside. Although the space around the rift stabilizes it, it only prevents changes. That does not mean it is stable inside. From what we have gathered, it seems to be rather turbulent inside, but our current ships are theoretically able to handle it. Of course, it will be better if there is someone who can lessen the burden on the ship's shields in events of emergency. We can't see through the whole rift, so we don't know if there is anything else in the way, but this is something the other rifts have in common. In conclusion, this rift is the best shot we have to get out, be it the danger level or the time difference. The leaders were excited to hear that. There were some who seemed to be pessimistic about this rift and wanted to search for another one. It has been 10 years since the war. It is time to move forward. I will be on the first ship to ensure that there are no mishaps. Broly suddenly voiced out after the leaders were making a commotion. The room quickly became silent and looked in his direction. Even if the space is too turbulent for the ship, I will be able to handle it. Besides, we only need to get inside to run some tests. We don't need to traverse it. We can't possibly allow the King of Dash. I am not king yet. Prepare the ship and a crew. It would be best if you send stronger people, so they survive longer in an emergency. Again, no one made a sound until a cough sounded out. All right, we will do as he says. If we truly want to get out of here, we need to take some risks. The city lord said out loud. Best would be to send part of the group that just came down, up again, as they already have experience. Besides, many of them are strong warriors. But for now, they need some rest. How about a week's time? Then we will send you into the rift and hopefully run some positive tests. The leaders dispersed and Broly went back to the city lord's palace and headed straight towards the cafeteria. As he thought, Taro, Ace, Zinjo, and Blitz were eating their stomach full. He got some food as well and sat at their table, opposite of Zinjo. "Greetings, your majesty. What an honor that you would sit at this table of peasants." Zinjo grinned as he saw Broly sit down. "An honor for you, it is?" Broly said with a serious face before grinning and tucked in his food. "Ha ha ha. Oh man. Well, how is it? You have a weak time?" Broly said with a mouthful. "Oh boy. Alright then. Are you sure you are king?" Zinjo said, seeing Broly's eating behavior. Gulp. "Do you really want to know?" Broly released his aura and made everyone on the table shiver. "Oh, okay, we get it." Zinjo stopped provoking him. Taro said while waving his fist at Zinjo. While they were messing around, chatter came from the corridor. A girls' group came in consisting of Aaliyah, Kana, Violet, Yanari, and a half-naked tan woman with gold stripes on her body and horns on her head. She was the succubus Taro had defeated in the tournaments. She seemed to become even more alluring and more adept at seducing people as she swayed her hips while walking, easily attracting Zinjo's and Blitz's attention. Taro saw her and immediately stood up and waved towards her. "Hey Vara, I am back." Vara ran up to him and pushed him back on the seat and quickly sat down beside him. Unexpectedly, she seemed to be rather shy and reserved. She took a few glances at Taro while eating from his plate, while he just grinned stupidly. Aaliyah quickly took the spot beside Broly while smiling brightly at him. Yanari sat down beside Zinjo and Violet sat down beside her. Kana squinted her eyes as she saw Aaliyah take up the only available spot beside Broly, but a sly grin appeared shortly after. She jumped over the table and gently flew down, squeezing herself onto Broly's lap. She then looked at Aaliyah with a triumphant expression. Chapter 66, Sparring. Zinjo and Blitz had a shocked expression on their face. The others had a surprised face as well. Zinjo only exclaimed, "My man, a king and now this." Broly just laughed happily as a response. Pretty much everyone now sitting at the table were from the last generation that were old enough to participate in the war, with the exception of Violet, of course. She was only a normal soldier at that time. She was only able to get in contact with this group, as Aaliyah was in the group that rescued her, which resulted in them having contact afterwards. They became friends fairly quickly. "So, when are you guys leaving?" Yanari asked. It was already known that Broly was going and needed strong crew members for the investigation. Obviously, the ones sitting on the table were the first choice, as they all knew each other, which would help with cooperation. "It is planned for the next week." Broly didn't hide anything from them and just told them about everything. After the tournament, they all had the experience to be Broly's sparring partner and quickly bonded. Besides, the information wasn't top secret, so Broly didn't thought much about it. After catching up with each other, Broly was led to the arena. The arena was for group battles. It was much bigger than the gravity chamber. Here they had enough space to let loose, especially since the ground was out of the material of the underground base, making it incredibly tough. It was time for Broly to test the S-Fighter's strength, and the others wanted to watch. Since Broly promised Zinjo and Blitz to show his legendary Super Saiyan state, he thought it was the perfect time to do so. Besides, from what Broly heard, Zinjo made major improvement the past years. Maybe after he tested the other Saiyan strength, it was time for them to have a spar as well. Broly stood dozens of meters away from the four Saiyans. They had already adopted their battle stance, while Broly stood there with crossed arms and looked at them with a smile. The others on the side were intensely focusing on the battlefield, so they wouldn't miss a single thing. Suddenly, an oppressing energy burst out of the four Saiyans. Their ki was rising, making the ground tremble. Suddenly, a golden light seemed to explode where they stood. For Super Saiyans enveloped with golden ki stood at the same spot. Except for the golden spiky hair, the difference in muscle mass between their base form was minuscule. It showed that they all had already mastered their Super Saiyan state and could unleash their full power in the first level. Violet and Vara on the side had difficulties to breathe from the pressure, until Yanari shielded them with her own ki. The entire time, Broly didn't move a single muscle. Now he outstretched his arm and beckoned them to come at him. Without waiting, Aaliyah shot straight at him, while Kana jumped upwards. Taro and Ace came at him from the sides. Aaliyah was the first to reach him and sent a straight punch at his face, while Taro aimed a kick at his back and Ace a kick at Broly's legs. Broly reacted by moving forwards and grabbing Aaliyah's wrist, pulling her into Taro's attack while evading Ace's kick by lightly jumping. Broly quickly followed up with a kick straight into Ace's face, sending him flying across the arena. Kana suddenly landed in front of him with a charged-up ki blast in both her hands. "Q," Broly said just before he was hit by the ki blast. The ground shook from the explosion while the other Saiyans were almost blown away by the shockwave. Without waiting, they all charged up their strongest techniques. They knew Broly wouldn't even be slightly affected by these attacks. They needed something big. The dust slowly settled, and slowly a green shimmer could be seen. Broly stood there unharmed, still seemingly in his base form. The only difference were his eyes. He looked at them with his yellow eyes and a grin on his face. His glance gave them a shiver, but they still followed through. On all sides, they released their attacks, shooting through the air fast as lightning. In just a moment, their attack reached Broly. H.A. With a short shout, a green sphere appeared around him, blocking the attacks. Ha 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 ha. With the laugh, the sphere expanded, pushing the attacks back. Broly raised his arm and shot a casual ki blast at Taro without it being hindered by the barrier. He saw this and knew, although it was a casual attack, it was something he couldn't take. He immediately ceased his attack and evaded to the side. Broly shot another 3 blasts, disrupting the other attacks as well. In a short moment of distraction, Broly had disappeared. They tried to locate him, but they couldn't find him. Ugh. Suddenly, Ace fell to the ground onto his sides unconscious. Fuck. I can't believe that the gap didn't lessen at all. Taro complained. Aaliyah and Kana looked at each other and came to an understanding as they nodded. While Taro was still searching for Broly, the energy they poured out was unreal. Their strength seemed to become endless. Now even Yanari began to worry that she couldn't shield Vara and Violet from the stray energy. Blitz and Zinjo quickly supported her. The air was being electrified by the high energy coming from the two. Ha-ra-ra-ia. Ah! They both shouted out. Their hair became thinner and spikier. The concentration of energy created lightning arcs all over their body and around them. It was like they had summoned lightning, but it was just the side effect of their tremendous power. Even the tough ground started breaking up under the pressure and were flung across the battlefield by the energy they poured out. They seemed to have reached another plateau, as the wave of energy suddenly ceased. Only the lightning and golden aura on their body remained. They found Broly standing over the unconscious body of Taro, who he knocked out while they were powering up. You really need to quicken your transformation. No normal opponent would just wait until you were done. Suddenly, green flame-like ki emerged from his feet up until it covered his body, making it impossible for them to see him. The ki died down shortly after, revealing a slightly taller and muscular figure with golden hair. His eyes had turned green. Broly didn't seem disturbed the slightest by the strength the girls showed. Rather, he seemed to be excited. Come on. What are you waiting for? He screamed out, and as if on cue, the girls seemingly teleported away, only to reappear on both Broly's sides. He easily blocked their kicks. They were slightly off balance by the rebound, but quickly readjusted themselves before beginning to rain strikes down on Broly. Broly's smile grew wider by the fight, as he easily dodged or blocked the attacks. Aaliyah found an opening and struck out hard to his face. She could have accepted if Broly had dodged or blocked, but neither happened. Instead, her attack seemed to go right through Broly's face. Kana suddenly cried out in pain, which only became more distanced by the second. An afterimage. She realized. 2 arms appeared on her sides and wrapped around her. The attack was too quick, she couldn't escape it at all. Broly hugged her from the back, but it hadn't any good feelings to it, as he picked her up and squeezed her. She screamed out, until she almost undid her transformation. For what felt to her like minutes, she was finally let go. Before she could rejoice her freedom, she was hit in the back, sent flying upwards into the ceiling. She slowly lost conscious as she heard Kana scream out on the ground. Her unconscious body slowly fell to the ground. Broly picked up the beaten Kana by the hand to eye level. Not bad. She smiled bitterly as a response and said, Thanks, you are not so bad yourself. Cough. She fell unconscious right afterwards. Broly fed them all a healing capsule and leaned them against the wall. He turned towards the others, who were watching. So, who wants to go next? The others only smiled bitterly. Even Zinjo, who was previously proud of his improved strength, shrank away from the challenge after witnessing that one-sided beatdown. Yanari, Blitz, and Zinjo shivered at the thought to re-experience the previous countless of spars they had with Broly. Saiyans are crazy. They think this kind of spar is actually normal. Maybe it is only this group. They thought in unison. Violet and Vara, on the other hand, had excited looks on their face. Well, Vara looked angrily at Broly while tending Taro. Only Violet seemed to be the only one that was undisturbed with this spar. Broly? I heard that your transformation is a bit different than the others, but it doesn't look any different. Violet asked. HM? Ah yes, that's what I wanted to show you. Broly slapped his forehead and then distanced himself a bit before a terrifying energy poured outside. Zinjo reacted quickly. He transformed to a figure 2 meters tall and with only 2 arms. A red aura emerged before solidifying into a red ki sphere guarding them. The others were in shock as they looked at the 2.8M monster that leaked a horrifying aura and ki. He was packed with steel-like muscles and his green hair pointed into the sky. He pridefully looked at them with his green eyes until his energy retracted inside. Broly grinned at them, but for them, it only looked like a beast grinning at their imminent demise. It was not because Broly wasn't able to control his emotions that influenced his expressions, but it was the natural vibe he gave off and because he wanted to mess with them. Chapter 67. Eyes. Unexpectedly, Violet was the first to talk again. Broly, do you always grow this big when transforming? She asked with gleaming eyes. Seeing her idol in his most powerful state was just too exciting for her. Her gaze was a bit off-putting for Broly. Yes, I do. He slowly reverted back towards his base form. How many transformations do you have? It seemed like it was 2, the golden-haired one in your legendary state, but what was that when Kana attacked you? It didn't seem like another transformation, but your eyes changed, and your strength increased too. HM? Oh, that, I will explain when the others wake up again. Another question, when you get bigger, do only your muscles grow, or is it an overall package? Do your organs grow too? Because only the muscles grew when Taro showed me this inferior grade. He said that he forces an increase in power output on top of the initial transformation. So, he inflates his muscles by sending ki through the body, which results in him becoming slower. But dash. Okay. Calm down for a second. Alright? I am not sprinting away when you don't ask me 5 questions at once. Violet was stunned for a second, but quickly came back to her senses. She blushed in embracement. She was just too excited, now that she could talk and learn more about him and his strength. The so-called living legend. Sorry, I got too excited, but you are a living legend which only appears every 1,000 years. In the future, I am sure, you will spread your name across the universe. I have to correct you on that one. The legend only says about the legendary Super Saiyan appearing 1,000 years ago, not appearing every 1,000 years. It is not like we keep record of every legendary Super Saiyan in history. We only know for sure that 1,000 years ago one had appeared. After he said that, the other Saiyans slowly woke up. They rested for a few minutes before Broly continued to answer Violet's answer. About my eyes. The other Saiyans began to listen attentively as well, as they heard him mention his eyes. They have noticed that it seems to be another form of power that he can use even in his base form. It is simple actually. The green eyes are just the normal change, when a Saiyan transforms into a Super Saiyan. Usually it is more a green-bluish color, but my ki turns it completely green. My yellow eyes have nothing to do with Super Saiyan. It is actually me tapping into the Oozuru power without becoming a giant ape. Is that why you told us to keep our tails? So, we can tap into that power? Aaliyah asked from the side.
No.
That has to do with a future transformation, but it is nothing we can achieve now without having thoroughly understanding of our Super Saiyan power. Tapping into the Oozuru power is not something you can do just by having a tail. I only was able to do so because I had observed my Oozuru transformation through my life force vision. On my journey, I trained to force this strength out, without becoming an Oozuru, but instead turning my eyes yellow. Your yellow eyes are hot. Kana suddenly threw in. They looked at her strangely before ignoring her again. Wait, if it hasn't to do with Super Saiyan, doesn't that mean you could stack it on top? Taro asked. Hehe. Yes, actually I also used my experience from becoming an Oozuru to regain my conscience when I first went legendary on my journey, accidentally resulting in me tapping into my Oozuru power while transforming into a Super Saiyan. The others, especially the Saiyans, were shocked by the revelation. Wouldn't that mean that he only showed a tiny fraction of his strength when they fought just a moment ago? Of course, I can't pull out all of my Oozuru power, but only part of it. It is better to turn into an Oozuru and then go super, and then compress all this power to turn back into a smaller size, making you much stronger. This is also the way for you to get stronger in the future. That's why I asked you to keep your tails and train to stay conscious after becoming an Oozuru. Oozuru stacked on top of Super Saiyan. The Saiyans' eyes were gleaming with anticipation. Yes, but first focus on those powers individually. You need to control both perfectly, making it easier when you want to combine those powers. That is also the reason why I didn't try it yet. I would most certainly lose control and destroy this entire planet. They shivered at the thought of Broly going Super Saiyan Oozuru and losing his shit. It was already horrible when he lost control in his legendary state. What else did you say? Yes. My size. First things first. You said that Taro inflates his muscles, leading to him becoming slower. That is only because he is an idiot. Hey, you said that you become slower if we forcefully increased our energy output. Taro screamed out. Yes, but fact is that it is still better than the normal Super Saiyan. There is a tilting point. You can basically push your output to a point where you only gain in strength and speed. If you go beyond that point, your muscles increase too much, making you slower. Basically, there are 2 grades after the first Super Saiyan level. One with gaining speed and strength, and one with losing speed but higher strength. That is why I told you to unearth the potential in your SLs, attaining Super Saiyan full power, as it has no drawbacks, you would only gain with it. But why is it that you grow taller? I know the reason for muscles becoming bigger is by inflating it with ki, but what is the reason you grow in overall size? Violet asked after Broly's explanation. The same reason why we transform into a giant ape when we look at the moon, or why our hair turns golden as a Super Saiyan. My legendary state is not a Super Saiyan form like the others. It is a different mutation. So, my increase in size is just the natural state my body adapts to if I go legendary. So, no other Saiyan can achieve that transformation. Aaliyah confirmed. Yes, it is like asking Zinjo to transform into an Ozuru. Any more questions? No, I think that is it for now. Violet said happily. For now? Broly, can we spar? And with spar I mean not being completely beaten up. Violet suddenly asked. Yeah, sure. I go easy on you. Thanks a lot. Wait. You going easy is an option? Zinjo and Blitz abruptly screamed out at the same time. Yes, of course. Not many people are masochistic like you guys. Zinjo, Blitz, and Yinari looked at him in disbelief. In fact, I also trained with other race leaders. Do you think I beat them up too? Yes. Okay, I did. But at least we all had a good time, right? No, we never asked to be thrashed. Well, you never complained either. Besides, you grew tremendously after we sparred. Spar my ass. You just burst into our training rooms, saying surprise, motherfucker, and beat us up. Zinjo screamed while pointing at Broly. Besides, we didn't grow stronger because of the spars, but because we put extra effort into our training. So we wouldn't die one day by your hands in one of your spars. Aha. So, you did grow stronger because I sparred with you. Unbelievable. Anyway, Violet, let's spar. All right, she said, fired up and undisturbed by the accusations the others threw at Broly. Unfortunately for her, she would soon find out that they weren't accusing but stating facts.
Chapter 68. Spar.
Ow, ow, ow. Violet whined as she rubbed her bruised arm. Broly, I thought you said you would be going easy. She whimpered. I did. He did. Broly and the others said in unison. All right, enough for today. Let's go eat again and then rest for the day. We can spar again the same time tomorrow?
Hell no.
Zinjo screamed out. Dude, a simple no is enough. It is not like I would beat you up 10 times worse if you don't show up tomorrow, Broly said with an evil grin. Gulp. On the other hand, I need some exercise after the months in space. Good boy. After eating, they went to the open-air hot spring together. Broly entered the hot water and unlike before, he thought the temperature was too low. On his journey, he usually bathed in water near lava after all. They relaxed and had some casual talk for a few hours until they started leaving. Broly asked them again to spar him the next day. Broly wanted more people to gang up on him, otherwise the fight would become boring for him. Broly was the last to leave. He put his clothes on and went to his room to see Kana leaning against the wall next to his door. Hey, what are you doing here? Were you waiting for me? Kana only then came out of daze and looked at him before smiling seductively. She came closer and hugged him before whispering to him. I just wanted to ask if you could have another spar with me. Broly was stunned for a moment before grinning. He opened his door and felt a push from behind. Kana pushed him inside in a hurriedly manner until they arrived at the bed. Hey everyone. The next scene is NSFW, not safe for work. Unfortunately, it cannot be included in this video because of YouTube's policies. However, if you're interested, a full, unfiltered version of this chapter is available on my Patreon page. You can find the link in the description below. I understand if this content isn't for everyone, so no worries if you prefer to stick with the YouTube safe version. But for those who are curious or want to support the channel further, Patreon is the place to go. Thanks for your understanding, and let's get back to the story. He left the room that morning and headed towards his training room. With his battle armor equipped, he trained under 1300 G gravity, which was his current limit with his base form. From what he knew from the series, Vegeta trained up to a gravity of 500 G till the Buu Saga, but this didn't mean Broly was merely 2.6 times stronger than Vegeta at that time. The higher the gravity, the more energy one needed to counteract it, which could be seen by the fact that Vegeta in the Buu Saga was certainly not only 5 times stronger than Goku pre-Namek, who trained under 100 G. Besides, if he pushed himself further, he could easily max out the gravity, but he chose against it. He wanted to train for the whole day and not just for a few hours. He not only needed strength but the endurance to go with it. Besides, next week would be his trip to the Rift, and he wanted to relax beforehand. He would have enough time if he traveled towards Namek in the future to train his body. He had already asked the best scientists in the city to integrate the best gravity chamber they could come up with into his personal spaceship. He already looked forward to the result. He hadn't trained his body for a long time and noticed his pace was exceedingly faster than after he had run out of excess life force. His body has already grown up by a lot, making it easier for his body to grow even stronger. Before, he had prematurely tortured his underdeveloped muscles, but fortunately, he had life force en masse, keeping his body healthy and increasing his progress. He first thought that he might have been healthy even without the life force, as the Saiyan physique would let him grow through injuries, but this only included major injuries, best life-threatening ones, to stimulate growth. The accumulated inner injuries were not fixed by this. It may be not as determining as for humans, but it would in the end slow him down in the future. To prevent this, he avoided any injuries in his cells. After the journey, this was even less of a concern for him. He didn't have to worry about any inner injuries as his use of life force control reached new heights, making it easier for him to detect and fix any problems some cells might have. After some time, a bell rang out, indicating someone at the door. He turned off the gravity and let the people in. Of course, they were his sparring partners he would train with today. After he had beaten them up and Blitz and Yinari were constantly complaining, he thought he had abused them enough. They went to eat again and went to the open-air hot spring. As the day before, he left last, and as he reached his room, he saw Kana leaning against the wall again. This time she didn't even bother to wear any clothes but came directly in her bathrobes. She was gripping her robe tightly until she saw Broly coming. She looked at him with a red face and steamy eyes pleading him. He opened the room, and another night was spent without rest. This routine repeated itself for a whole week until a morning when Broly got information about his crew and about the mission in general. He looked through the documents and he was only responsible for protecting them from the distorted space inside the rift, as the others shoot out some devices, which would run some tests and then go out again. In short, bring them in and out. He looked at the nude Kana who was sleeping on his bed and threw a towel at her, waking her up. Get ready, in a few hours we are going up. Chapter 69. Rift. Kana pulled the towel off her face and dizzily sat up. Broly watched her amused. He stood up and was about to go outside before he saw her fall back into bed and dozing off again. Broly went to the bed, climbed on top of Kana, and whispered into her ear. How about another round? She opened her eyes, staring at his mischievously smile. Come on, we gotta go dash. As Broly stood up, he felt Kana wrapping her arms around his neck. He stood there with her hanging off his neck. She used her legs to wrap around his waist and sealed off his lips with hers before he could say anything. She stopped her kiss and gazing affectionately in his eyes. I love you. Broly was stunned at the sudden exclamation. Although they had sex all week long, it was only about the pleasure. It was not like he didn't like her, but Kana saw his hesitantly reaction and could only smile bitterly. She aggressively kissed him while forcing her tongue in. A few minutes passed with them making out before they stopped, and she whispered into his ear. I am Saiyan woman. You know we are stubborn. She lightly bit his lip. I will just make you love me. She jumped off him and slowly walked to the bathroom while exaggerating, swaying her naked butt. She leaned against the open bathroom door, presenting her nude body in full glory, giving him a wink before closing the door. Broly heard the water running from the shower. He was tempted to follow her, but he knew that hours would pass until he would calm down again. He waited until she came out again, all clothed up, in her tight body armor, and with a slight smile on her face. He walked up to her and put his hands on her butt, kneading her until he was satisfied. You are making good progress, he said, staring into her eyes before taking her by the hand, leading her out of the room. Kana was uncontrollably blushing and had a big smile on her face. Broly went to the meeting with Kana in tow. He greeted some other leaders and talked about the mission with the city lord. The rest of the important crew members had quickly gathered and were listening to the details. After a few hours, the start would be announced, and they would be on their way. Taro and Ace were asked by Broly to stay on ground. They were tasked to keep an eye on any ships that took off after them or any other objects following them. Aaliyah, though, was a crew member. She was quite excited to see this rift but was now pouting the whole time. Violet, who was assigned as the pilot, noticed her behavior. Hey, what are you pouting about? It will be fun. I will show off my superb flying skills. With me as the pilot there will be no problems, she confidently proclaimed while beating her chest. I know. You are the most anxious to get to the front line. So much that you learn to fly a spaceship, but I am not worried about the flight. It is about them. She pointed at a couple with her eyes. The woman was sitting on the guy's lap while pecking his lips from time to time, while he caressed her butt. They were totally disregarding the public as they made out. This couple, of course, was Broly and Kana. Feeling a glaring stare from somewhere, Kana turned her head. Aaliyah was staring daggers at them. Kana looked at her while she guided her hand to Broly's crotch, not hiding her movements at all. Aaliyah's mind clicked. For the last week, Kana was always leaving last from the hot spring, avoiding going back to their rooms together. She thought it was weird but didn't think much about it. She was too occupied in exploring her body with her newfound hobby, but now it made sense. Kana had already made successful advances on Broly while advising her to know her body more. Before she could continue her thoughts, they were interrupted with the announcement of the start of the mission. The crew members boarded the ships. While boarding, Aaliyah couldn't take it anymore and went up to them. I am quickly borrowing her for a while, she said with an icy smile before pulling Kana away. She led her towards a storage room inside. Not bad, Kana. I thought we were friends, Aaliyah cried out after closing the door. Kana shrunk back. What are you talking about? Kana asked as she saw Aaliyah with watery eyes. You successfully seduced him, are you proud? Making me occupied with masturbation while you went off into the sunlight with him? Is that what you wanted? Kana was stunned for a moment before smiling bitterly. Sigh. I never believed for a second that I could have Broly all for myself, not after seeing you both in the training room. And I never wanted you out of the way, so I could steal him from you. I just wanted you to be prepared, that's why I gave you all these. You know, the toys. Sai, I am sorry for teasing you earlier. You are my best friend and I never wanted to hurt you. So, you never had sex with Broly? Aaliyah wiped her tears away. Well, cough. I somehow ended up at his door and it is not like I planned to meet him when he was alone, so I could give my first to him or anything but dashed. So, you did. Kana shouted, stomping her feet, making the whole ship tremble. Kana clapped her hands together and bowed down. I am sorry, it was just that after training with him again, my emotions were in a tumult and I didn't think it through. She bowed down, waiting for her response. Humph. You have to promise me that you won't fuck him until I have. Understood? Aaliyah shouted angrily. Understood? Yes, I promise. Kana slowly opened one of her eyes. She saw Aaliyah with a bright smile, and even her watery eyes returned to normal as if the scene before was just an illusion. All right, now that you promised, let's go back. We have a mission to complete. She turned around to leave until Kana called out. Wait, you are really not angry anymore? I don't mind you sleeping with him. I was just afraid that you got too far ahead of me. Besides, you are later going to tell me everything about your nights with him. I want to prepare myself mentally to what's to come. Hee. Aaliyah said while biting her lip, imagining something. All right, we are going. Kana was intimidated by her calm and commanding voice that she immediately agreed to everything she said. After a short while, Broly saw Aaliyah and Kana come back. He stood in the cockpit with Violet, waiting for the ship to take off. Are you guys all right? Yes, we just made something clear. Ha ha ha. Isn't it exciting that we are flying into a rift? Aaliyah jumped forward, grasping Broly's hand, while her eyes were glistening. Ahem. Sure. Broly looked at her. She looks at me like I am food. She is even drooling, Hee. Yes, to explore this kind of thing. Isn't that every man's dream? Broly said as he wrapped one arm around Aaliyah and one around Kana, pulling them closer, making them both blush. Violet rolled her eyes at the display. Violet focused on the instructions and saw that everyone is on board, ready for takeoff. She spoke through a microphone about their imminent departure. Shortly afterwards, the ship took off, shooting into the sky towards their destination in space. A few minutes later, they arrived and readied themselves for entry. They slowly closed in. Their ship seemed to warp into a swirl as they got closer before vanishing. The crew looked outside and saw a space with colorful nebula. The ship was trembling since they entered. With special suits, a few soldiers went outside and shielded the ship with their ki. Broly, Aaliyah, and Kana were outside as well. The scientists, on the other hand, were tipping away on their panels, and soon a few drone-like devices flew out of the ship and formed a hexagon above the ship. Before laser-like beams connected the spaceship and the drones, while the drones were connected to each other. Broly looked up and observed for any disturbance, but nothing seemed to happen even after an hour. Suddenly, thick nebula approached them from afar. It was still far away and wouldn't reach them before they were done. As a precaution, Broly flew forward and approached the nebula for a bit. His ki flared up and protected the whole ship from ahead. He looked at the distant nebula. He suddenly had a bad premonition. He couldn't help but turn on his life force vision. His forehead started sweating as he stared wide-eyed at the massive amount of life force hidden inside the nebula. He wanted to retreat, but the life force suddenly vanished. He stood there with his mouth wide open, not sure to think about what he saw. The nebula slowly thinned again, blending in with the rest of the space. For the rest of the mission, Broly was on full alert and even turned into his legendary state. After another hour, they were done. He returned to the ship and they all moved out of the rift. The ship only sustained minor damage from the distorted space, but nothing out of their expectation. Chapter 70. Hotness. Kana went up to Broly, who furrowed his eyebrows. Hey, are you alright? What are you thinking about? Sigh. Nothing, let's go outside. Broly answered with a slight smile on his face. The crew went outside, and the mood was good. According to the scientists, the first look at the data seems quite promising. Maybe they would only make some small adjustments to previous prototype, and they could stabilize the rift. After the gathering that told the leaders that they would need around a week to create the first devices, which are based on their prototypes. Those should be able to stabilize space inside. The higher-ups were of course delighted and started celebrating. There was much alcohol and food involved. Broly was occupied with devouring the buffet with Aaliyah and Kana. Many leaders wanted to introduce their race's female geniuses to Broly, but were quickly scared away by the combined harsh looks from Aaliyah and Kana. Broly obviously noticed their actions and was quite pleased by having two beauties guarding him. He already saw them as his, so seeing their affection made him feel pretty good. After a while, Kana said that she wanted to sleep at her place today, so he shouldn't wait for her. Broly was a bit confused by the sudden change. For the last week they had shared a bed with each other, which made her actions a bit weird for Broly, but he didn't think much about it. Maybe she needed some rest, he thought. After the party almost died out, Broly and Aaliyah left for their rooms. Aaliyah was drunk. On their way to her room, she was constantly touching Broly, saying that she wanted to sleep with him. After the time spent with Kana, he wasn't as hasty to get into her pants, so instead of accepting her advances, he pushed her inside her room and tucked her in. She quickly dozed off, and Broly left. He didn't want to take advantage of someone who was drugged and barely able to stay conscious, although he did wake up Kana once with a surprise. He entered his room and undressed himself, ready to go to bed. "What are you doing in my closet?" Broly suddenly said out loud. After saying that, he heard something fall inside. He opened his closet and saw Kana covered in his clothes. "What are you doing there?" I forgot my pajamas. I was just looking for it in here. Didn't think you would be back already." Broly rolled his eyebrows. "That's why you completely entered the closet and closed the door behind you, which gives you almost no space to bend down." "Yeah, right?" He picked her up and put her on his shoulders. He closed the door and took her to bed. He laid down beside her and started sleeping. She looked at him and snuggled up on him. With a smile on her face, she fell asleep. A couple of days passed. Broly, as always, was training. He and Kana weren't intimate with each other, and Broly quickly found out why. These days, Aaliyah invited all the S-fighters to drink and would try to seduce Broly. He found out that as soon as Aaliyah made some kind of advances, Kana and the others would leave the two. Kana, being mischievous, always hid inside the room, but always with a perfect view at the bed. After the third day, he told Aaliyah to meet him at his room later at noon. She hesitated for a moment, but it was still relatively bright outside, as the sun would only set soon, which was enough to give her courage to walk in. She saw Broly sitting on a chair, placing his chin on his hands. As soon as she walked in, she wanted to say something, but was distracted with the bed on the side. She blushed before asking, Broly, why did you wanted me to come here?" Broly appeared in front of her and sealed her lips with his and embraced her. "You don't have to be so anxious." Her face became even redder. She only nodded slightly without looking at him directly. Broly held her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "I'm not even sure why you feel the need to sleep with me. You don't have to force yourself. I know that you used alcohol to give yourself courage to approach me, but if something troubles you, just say it." She blanked out for a second. She gritted her teeth, seemingly fighting with the decision to tell him or not. After a few minutes of them standing there, while hugging, she started talking. "I heard about your nights from Kana." She stopped, struggling to continue. "She told me everything in great detail, and you know I don't think I can handle you." Broly seems to slowly get what she was getting at. "She told me that you lose yourself. I thought if you were a bit more drunk you would easier fall asleep and I would be number." "Ha ha ha ha." Broly started laughing, which surprised her, making her pout that he didn't take it as serious as her. "So sorry. You shouldn't think that I would treat you the same as Kana. She is a masochist after all, and likes it rougher. Of course, I would hold back with you." "That's not what she told me. She said that she would like it either way." Wait, what?" Broly was surprised. He was pretty sure that he figured Kana out. "She said that no matter how she approaches you, you always go wild and do it for hours until she loses herself in pleasure and forgets about the time." "Oh, I think I have to talk with her later." "Okay, how about this? I give you full reign and I won't do anything." Why? You mean I should do it myself?" Aaliyah stuttered as her head started glowing brightly red. "Well, it will make it easier for you to adapt when you control the pace, won't it?" "Yes, but I never..." Before she could say anything, he gave her a deep kiss and caressed her behind. Hey everyone. The next scene is NSFW, not safe for work. Unfortunately, it cannot be included in this video because of YouTube's policies. However, if you're interested, a full, unfiltered version of this chapter is available on my Patreon page. You can find the link in the description below. I understand if this content isn't for everyone, so no worries if you prefer to stick with the YouTube safe version. But for those who are curious or want to support the channel further, Patreon is the place to go. Thanks for your understanding, and let's get back to the story. She again collapsed next to him, while panting. He crawled behind her and embraced her. She felt his wide arms around her and dozed off shortly after. Broly saw that Kana opened the closet. She entered midway, with her clothes being all messy. She climbed into the bed and snuggled up at Broly's back. "Next time I want all three of us to..."
Spa.
Kana whispered. Getting it off while only able to watch made her frustrated. Broly laid on his back, pulling Kana and Aaliyah towards his chest. He looked at Kana before talking. "Of course." He gave her a deep kiss. She fiercely blushed and rested her head on his chest. Hearing his heartbeat, she fell asleep.